So the question you have to ask yourself is, are you lucky? Have you had a lucky life? Do you think you're going to be lucky in the future? And if you understand the concept of luck, if you understand how luck works, you'll discover what I've discovered, that you can hack luck. Now, when I first tell you there's an ability to create your own luck, of course, there will be a lot of skeptics out there that will point out something very obvious about luck. And that is that, for example, where you're born will obviously determine some element of luck in your life. And no matter what you do in life, you cannot really influence where you're born. And that's true. However, what I've discovered after decades of researching luck and trying to understand how luck works is that, in fact, luck is broken into two categories. The first element of luck is what we've just talked about there, random occurrences, totally random occurrences. Where you're born is nothing other than a random occurrence. Of course, another random occurrence could have been coronavirus. That could be explained as a random occurrence. That happens to us all. It is luck, good or bad, depending on your setup in life. If you're Zoom, for example, some would describe that as a lucky moment for a brand like that. They've done quite well because of coronavirus. But let's assume it's an element of random luck. And so what I've discovered in my research is that that type of luck in the makeup of someone's 80-year life on average is actually only 2% of their life. So in other words, in your whole existence on this planet, you will in fact only experience around 2% of uncontrollable, totally random luck. And so this leaves 98% of your life for what I describe as luck you can influence. And so there is a formula for influencing luck. And having studied lots of people that have been incredibly lucky, including myself, I've come to this conclusion around how luck works. Now, I'll just caveat this process by saying that there will always be anomalies to any theory, okay? And absolutely, with this theory that you can hack luck that I have, there will always be outliers. There will always be exceptions to the rule. But 100% for sure, I know that if you follow these three basic principles, you will increase your chances of luck 1,000%. First, and probably in my view the most important of the three rules to increase your chances of luck, is you've got to take a lot of risk. There is a saying out there which I'm not particularly fond of, which is basically, the harder you work, the luckier you get. The context of it was a golfer who believed the more he practiced, the better he got. And actually that whole phrase has been taken out of context, and a lot of people hear, you work hard and you will be successful. It's not true. If it was true, then nurses and all these people that work incredibly hard to make our world work would probably all be billionaires. They're working 20-hour shifts in some cases, 7 days a week, especially through pandemics like coronavirus, non-stop. And so it certainly hasn't translated into what we deem as traditional success. And so the harder you work, the luckier you get is not true. But what I know to be true is the more risk you take, the luckier you get. This is a fact. Again, talking about my own personal experience, I ran a series of companies, one of them called Fluid, just across the border in Hong Kong. And in that company, for 10 years, I was completely focused and intent on it. And it grew, slowly but surely over time. In 10 years, it grew. And then I woke up and I realized this thing I'm now basically talking to you about, that the phrase, the harder you work, the luckier you get, was not true. In fact, I learned the more risk you take, the luckier you get is true. So the first risk I took, which was crucial, is I brought someone else in to run the company I'd been working hard at. And instantly I saw that this risk equaled success, because this person was very talented and they made the business work and they made it grow much faster than I had in the last few years of running the company. They came in with new energy, new ideas. And I took a risk and brought someone else in, and then I found myself actually working less hard and actually being more successful. My business that I owned was more successful because I worked less hard but took more risk. And as I discovered this formula, I then started taking even more risk. I invested in loads of startups, and I started opening up whole new ventures, very risky ones, entrepreneur clubs and investment platforms and all sorts of things, comic book business. And the more I took risk, of course, also the more I failed. But the more I failed, the more I learned, the more successful I became. And so, for sure, one of the three things you can absolutely do to increase your chances of luck is take more risk. And one final thing I'll mention on risk that's really important. Whenever one ever feels that they're taking a risk, an element of fear will creep into our bodies. We've all felt it. Frankly, even coming and doing a talk like this, there's an element of fear that most people have. Often they'll write down public speaking being one of the biggest fears in life. But anyone that's done public speaking at scale, as I have done, will tell you that once you conquer that fear is good. It makes you prepare, it makes you plan, it makes you care, gives you energy, gives you passion. But then when you go through to the other end of fear, there is incredible joy, satisfaction. You've produced a talk like this that might be useful to millions of people. And through the other side of fear is total satisfaction. And so fear, actually in the modern world, has become a misunderstood word. And today, when people feel fear, their instinct is to try and suppress it and try and not feel it by saying no to things that make them feel fearful. Taking risk, for example, they'll say no to things because it makes them feel fearful. And in the original design of fear, a lion is coming towards us. We instinctively feel this additional energy, this additional superpower, the ability to think faster, move quicker, do incredible things, almost superhuman things that fear gives us the chance to do. And we have no choice but to leverage it and live with it, because the lion's coming towards us. There's no, oh, you know what, I'm going to turn off fear. I'm just going to say no to the lion eating me. That doesn't exist in the modern world. That does exist, and that's the problem. People can say no to the lion coming towards them instead of realizing it's an opportunity to learn and build your skill of fear. So, fear and luck and risk are all entwined with each other. But if you can learn to love fear, embrace it, lean into it, you can then learn to take more risk. And every time you feel fear and you feel risk, you know you're on the right path. And that is definitely the secret to luck. The second element to increasing your chances of more luck in life is, in my view, knowing your destination. Now, when I first say this, I'm sure a lot of you in the audience will be thinking, well, I know where I'm going, I know what I'm doing. But do you? Do you really know? One of the things I do when I'm investing in businesses is I ask the startups that I'm investing in to tell me, what is your destination? 9 times out of 10, founders will say, well, I'm building this company up and Uber will buy it, or Tencent will buy it, or some big brand will buy us and we'll make all this money. And every single time I hear that, they're missing the point. Money is only fuel for your car. But without knowing your destination, you actually don't know how much fuel you really need in life. So a lot of people think they want to make lots of money. Actually, they don't need to make lots of money. There's always that famous story of a man who owned a beautiful restaurant in a beautiful part of the world, and he enjoyed running that restaurant, and someone came in one day, an investor, and said, this is such a beautiful restaurant concept. This could be bigger than McDonald's. Why don't we expand it? And the founder of the restaurant said, okay, that sounds interesting. What happens if we expand it? He said, well, then, you'll have thousands of restaurants across the world and you'll be famous. And the founder of the restaurant said, okay, that sounds cool. Then what? Well, then you can retire and do whatever it is you want with all that money and fame. And the restaurant owner said, you know what I would do? And the investor said, no. What would you do? He said, I'd buy a little restaurant in a place I love to live and serve interesting people like you. In other words, he knew his destination already. He wasn't tempted by what was perhaps someone else's destination, in this case an investor's destination to make lots of money or leverage someone else's good idea. He knew his purpose. And I think that is really important. Knowing your destination, understanding what your purpose is in life is kind of crucial. And once you know the destination, magic happens. For example, you know what to pack in the car for that journey. When you arrive at your destination, you're prepared mentally, physically. You know what it is you're trying to do and you're ready for that. You see it as a long game, not as a short game. Second, you know what vehicle you need. You know what sort of, is it going to be, heavy terrain? Is it long distance? Is it short but sweet? And what is the destination? And then you can pick the vehicle. And of course, by picking the vehicle, you can then also decide what sort of people are going to fit in that vehicle. And the metaphor carries on in my mind to this, basically your whole life can be determined. If you went outside today, got in your car and didn't know where you were going, what a mess your day would be, right? But if you knew exactly where you were going, some beautiful things happen. Even I've had this experience. I get to the very destination I planned, only to realize, actually, I want more, or I want to do something different. But I can tick off the box, the sense of accomplishment, that I did do what I said I was going to do. And even if I arrive at my destination and I've changed, my environment's changed, you can then reset your destination. But if you don't have a target, you won't hit it. So that destination is so crucial. And if you know it, it is a game changer in the equation of luck. You will increase your chances of luck because you'll be looking out for the very thing you need to get to the destination you want to be going to. And finally, and I always hate putting these things in order, but I guess to me this is also pretty important, but a lot of people do overlook this. If you want to be more lucky in life, you've got to be persistent. Now, it's a very interesting word, persistence, because quite often I will talk to founders of companies and they'll tell me they're not enjoying what they're doing. And I will say to them, don't do it. Life is short. We've probably all heard that saying. When to quit and when to continue. There's an interesting line between the two. But I think quite often, if you have purpose, you enjoy fear, then this comes up less often and your whole concept of persistence changes. Your whole paradigm of what persistence means completely shifts. And you can be persistent without even feeling any persistent pain. It's like going to the gym. Maybe if you actually find an exercise you like doing at the gym, you look forward to it as opposed to dread it. And persistence in a sales context is pretty interesting. I personally built a lot of my businesses on sales. Sales is a very powerful tool if you leverage it right. I think it's more powerful than raising money from investors. As an investor, I think I can say this, it's not always good to raise money. But if you do know how to sell, you can build an incredible business. And persistence and sales are very entwined. And so I'll give you an example. There was a study done by a famous university that basically had this whole concept of why do some salespeople do really well and others not do so well? And they figured out the top 10% of salespeople, what they determined as good salespeople, would on average reach out to a potential client 5 times. These are the good salespeople, right? And so they would have a process. They would get a lead, they would follow up, they would maybe email, they would then maybe follow up with a phone call, they'd follow up with another email, and then they would stay in touch with them on average as well for about 3 months with no reply, no interaction at all from that client, would persist for about 3 months before they would say, hey, the traditional sales model is, hey, this is not, stop selling to someone that doesn't need what you're offering, right? Give up, because don't waste your time. 80% of your time is selling to people that don't want your product. Spend 80% of your time selling to people that do. It's a mistake. It's a misunderstanding about sales. And persistence is a good way of explaining it. So I started a company in Hong Kong that did a lot of business in this part of China as well. And that company's biggest goal when we first set out was to work with the world's top brands. And we wrote down 50 companies that we wanted to work with worldwide. And we said, right, these are the companies we believe that we can not only help, but of course, companies we'd like to be associated with. So I, as the salesperson for that company at the time, wrote down a monthly plan of how we would always reach out to these companies no matter what, whether they were our clients or not. It took me 9 years from starting the company, 9 years to get all 50 clients as a client. And the way I did it was every single month I found a reason to communicate with those clients. It wasn't a one-off 5-step process to sell, and if it doesn't work, move on. Every single month I would send a newsletter to those clients. Every single month I would find a way of saying happy birthday or happy Chinese New Year, or send them some sort of insight information on their industry and what was happening. Every single month I would find a way to talk to them for 9 years. And that is the difference. The 1% of salespeople know this persistence concept. There's no, I've tried, they don't want to buy, and put the lead into someone else's hands or give up. It's about being persistent. And if you're persistent, take lots of risk, embrace fear, and know your destination, your life will transform, your luck will pour in. And I know for a fact in my own life that I have transformed my 2% because of my 98%. When I was 15 years old, my father suddenly died of a heart attack, and my whole life fell apart. At the time, I thought I was incredibly unlucky to lose my father and have that very difficult situation that then ensued. I was homeless, I didn't have any money, I didn't have any skills, I left school, and it was a very difficult time. But equally, through all of that trauma came these 3 key elements I've just mentioned, these strengths to persist, the ability to take risk, because hey, when you've got nothing to lose, taking more risk feels good. Of course, learning to then improve your ability to enjoy fear, because hey, you've lost everything. What else is there to fear? Right? And then pushing through to the other side and realizing that actually even the 2% of bad luck, depending on your perception of that moment, can end up being good luck. And to me, that is the secret. A lot of what we're talking about when it comes to have you had bad luck or have you had good luck, are you lucky or unlucky, is perception. Buddha once said, we're all going to have 10,000 hours of good luck and 10,000 hours of bad luck. And my view is everything about that statement is just a matter of perspective. And the truth is, you can have 20,000 hours of good luck if you choose. So let me tell you about a few people that have been incredibly lucky or unlucky, depending on how you view it. One element of it is how you perceive your moment in time. So there were these 4 boys. They were playing on a rock in Hiroshima on the 6th of August, 1945. The 4 boys used to always play here, and they used to look down at the river below and tease each other about how they should take a risk and jump into the river below. And 3 out of the 4 boys would always be fearful and say no. And then this one day, this one boy said, I'm going to show you how to do it. I'm not scared. And all of his friends said, be careful, watch out, you could hit the rock and die. All that fear kicked in, and the fear of the 3 boys was being projected onto the boy that was not fearful. But he pushed through that objection, that friend caring about him feeling, and went and jumped off the cliff. And as he hit the water, his 3 friends looking down above, grateful that he hadn't hit the rock and had hit the water and was safe. At that very moment, as the boy hit the water, the first nuclear bomb ever dropped on a city was dropped on Hiroshima. In that moment, and these kids were just outside the radius of the nuclear blast, at that moment, as the radiation spread out and flowed past these boys playing on the rock, the 3 boys got completely exposed to the fallout. But the one boy under the water got less affected. Now, back at that time, nuclear weapons themselves were a lot less dangerous. There's lots of joke adverts around at the time about called duck and cover, quite funny to Google, but basically you could hide inside a bathtub and potentially not get affected by the nuclear fallout. And it was true, outside the blast radius, there were some case studies where the bomb fallout wasn't that dramatic. And so basically, because this boy was under the water at the time of the fallout, he didn't get as exposed as the 3 boys on the rock. And the 3 boys on the rock sadly did die from radiation poisoning. But the boy who fell into the water didn't. And so the moral of the story is, I think sometimes the perception of what's risky and what's not is very interesting in hindsight. So that boy taking a jump into the water was risky, but was it? He lived. He lived his life. He went on to do interesting things with his life. And the three that didn't want to take risk, sadly, didn't go any further because they didn't take risk. And history is completely littered with examples like this. You know, there was an interesting story of, in the Second World War again, of a RAF pilot who was flying over, looking as the British and Americans and landed in Normandy for D-Day, and how the pilot recalls how the plane to the left and the plane to the right both got shot at and was destroyed, and he survived. Why? His training wasn't any better, his plane wasn't any better, the equipment he had on board wasn't any better. The harder he worked made no difference at that moment, right? There is this random luck. But the fact that he was lucky in that moment, he then took the fact that he felt lucky and said for the rest of his life he was grateful. And because he was grateful, he permanently looked for opportunities to feel lucky, do good things for people, give back and get that luck that he felt he'd had his whole life because of that horrible experience with his friends either side in planes dying. So luck is a really interesting concept, and I do feel like with all my heart that it's something you can hack. And if you enjoyed today's insight, let me know. I know we're broadcasting this as a video instead of face-to-face, but I'd be really interested to know your story of luck, what happened to you in life. I'm putting a book together around luck, so if you have a story you want to share about luck, then please reach out and let me know. And thank you very much for letting me share my story and insights on luck today.